I was fixing the frayed edges of my old gray shawl with trembling fingers that morning, trying my best to look presentable even though I had long accepted that nothing about me looked new anymore. My grandson Ethan was having his church confirmation ceremony, a day I had prayed I would live long enough to see. I still remembered the first moment I held him as a tiny newborn, whispering into his soft hair, "Grandma's here, sweetheart, and she always will be." I never imagined that years later, on the most important day of his young life, I would stand outside a church where my own family now treated me like a stranger. I pushed open the heavy oak doors, took a single step inside, and before I could even adjust my eyes to the light, a loud voice burst through the silence. "Who let that beggar in?" The words slammed into my chest like someone had struck me with something sharp. People turned to stare. Some laughed. Some wrinkled their noses as if my presence polluted the clean air of the sanctuary. My ears rang, my vision wavered, and for a moment I thought I might collapse right there on the polished wooden floor. I looked down at my hands worn, cracked, and aged from decades of cleaning houses, cooking meals, and raising children who no longer needed me, and realized they really did look like a beggar's hands. Then across the room I saw Ethan. My sweet boy. But instead of smiling, he took a small step back. As if pretending not to know me was easier than admitting who I was. I swallowed hard and tried to steady myself, shifting my hands into my lap to hide how rough they looked, and walked further into the room though every step felt like carrying a mountain. The bright church light stung my tired eyes, and I felt painfully aware of how plain my clothes were next to the polished shoes and ironed collars around me. I whispered Ethan's name, hoping he might recognize my voice, but his mother leaned down, whispered something sharp into his ear, and quickly moved him away. It felt as if someone had reached inside my chest and twisted. Memories flooded back. Memories of me cutting corners on my own meals so my son's family could eat. Memories of rocking Ethan through fevers. Memories of stitching clothes late into the night because we couldn't afford store-bought ones. But none of that mattered here. A woman in a crisp navy dress stepped in front of me and grabbed my elbow gently but firmly. "Ma'am, this ceremony is for family only," she said. My voice cracked as I whispered, "I am family. I'm his grandmother." She let out a small laugh, not cruel but dismissive, and replied, "If you were, I'm sure someone would have come to get you by now." My heart pounded painfully. I suddenly wondered if love really had an expiration date, if devotion counted only while you were useful. My chest felt tight as though the air itself refused to enter my lungs. I had never felt so out of place in a building I once considered a safe haven. I moved to the side wall, leaned against it for support, and lifted my eyes toward the vaulted church ceiling I had admired so many times in the past. It was supposed to represent heaven, comfort, peace, belonging. But today it felt heavy, distant, a reminder that even God's house might not have room for someone like me. I kept waiting for Ethan to look at me, to come running the way he used to when he was little and I surprised him at school, but he stayed rooted to the stage steps, his eyes fixed anywhere but on me. The sting of being forgotten by your own blood is the kind of pain that spreads slowly, like frostbite, until you can't feel anything at all. I remembered the day my son told me I couldn't live with them anymore. "Mom, you're getting older, we just can't afford to carry your expenses," he'd said. It felt like being gently pushed off a cliff. I left quietly, not wanting to be a burden. But Ethan had always been my one hope, my one soft place. And now he too was slipping away. Nearby, a pair of teens pointed at me and giggled, mimicking my walk, as if my age was a joke to them. I wondered if this was how it felt to become invisible. Alive but unseen. Breathing but unacknowledged. When a church staff member approached and firmly told me I needed to sit outside because the ceremony was about to begin, I nodded, unable to speak. My heart stayed there at the doorway even as my feet carried me out. Outside, I sank slowly onto a wooden bench, the cool air touching my cheeks like quiet apologies the world itself felt too late to offer. I stared down at my hands, these same hands that had held my husband during his final breath, that had worked double shifts to keep my family from falling apart, that had raised my son and helped raise his son. Now those hands were brushed aside as though they meant nothing. The voice from inside echoed in my head. "Who let that beggar in?" It wasn't just an insult. It was a verdict. A sentence passed on a lifetime of sacrifices that no longer counted because age had changed my appearance, and poverty had become my label. I closed my eyes and felt tears gathering in the corners, not because of the insult itself, but because my own grandson had not stood up for me. He had not even walked toward me. Maybe I really had become a burden too heavy to acknowledge. The church doors opened and faint music drifted out. Choirs singing, families cheering. And I felt like I was sitting on the edge of the world watching everyone else belong to something I was no longer part of. I thought about leaving, about walking away and never looking back. But a fragile hope inside me whispered that I should see Ethan one more time. Just once more. Even if all I received in return was silence. I walked slowly down the church steps, my breath unsteady, each movement feeling heavier than the last, as if sorrow itself had wrapped around my bones. But I kept moving because that was all an old woman like me could still do, keep moving even when no one was watching. I reached the sidewalk and stood there for a moment, unsure whether to turn left toward the bus stop or right toward the long road that led back to the small room I rented. My heart was aching in a way I couldn't explain. Not the sharp pain of insult, but the deep, quiet ache of being forgotten by someone you once held like your own heartbeat. I wiped my tears with the corner of my sleeve, trying to hide them even though no one was there to see. Then suddenly I heard footsteps. Fast, uneven, almost panicked. Before I could turn, a small hand grabbed my shoulder. I looked up and saw Ethan standing there, chest rising and falling, eyes glassy as if he had run hard to catch me. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His lips trembled, and for a moment he was the same little boy who used to cry when he fell and scrape his knee, looking to me for comfort. "Grandma," he finally whispered. And just that one word melted the ice inside me. He looked guilty, ashamed, hurting in a way I never wanted him to hurt. "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking. I didn't know what to do. Everyone was staring. Mom said to stay quiet. I didn't mean to ignore you. His apology was messy and broken, but it was real. I felt tears forming again, not from pain this time, but from the simple relief of hearing him say my name the way he used to. I reached up and gently cupped his cheek with my trembling hand, and he didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned into my touch like he had done 100 times when he was little. "I was never angry," I whispered. "Just hurt. But I never stopped loving you. Not for a moment." Ethan shook his head, wiping his face roughly with the sleeve of his crisp white shirt. "Grandma, please come back inside with me," he pleaded. "I don't care what anyone thinks. You're my grandmother. You belong there more than anyone." For a moment I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to go, but because I wasn't sure my heart could handle walking back into the place where I had been humiliated. But then I saw the desperation, the sincerity, the love returning to Ethan's eyes. And that was enough. He reached out and held my hand, not loosely, not politely, but tightly, protectively, like he was afraid I might vanish if he let go. Together we walked back toward the church. The doors opened again, and this time the world didn't feel so cold. People turned to look, but Ethan didn't let go of my hand. In that moment I realized something important. Love doesn't disappear. It just gets buried under fear and pressure, and sometimes all it takes is one brave moment to bring it back to life. And as Ethan guided me gently to the front row, claiming me, honoring me, I felt something warm growing in my chest again. Not pride, not relief, but hope. A hope I thought I had lost forever.